On this vote, the yeas are 190 and the nays are 228. The motion is not adopted. The question is on passage of the joint resolution. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it.
Recorded
For
vote.
what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
And this is final passage on the continuing resolution, a spending bill funding the federal government past the September 30th end of fiscal year through December the 15th of this year, and including language eliminating funding of the 2010 health care law.
On this vote, the yeas are 230 and the nays are 189. The joint resolution is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Would all members please take their conversations off the floor? Pursuant to House Resolution 351 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 1526. Will the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Womack, kindly take the chair?
Are we ready? The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 1526, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill to restore employment and educational opportunities in and improve the economic stability of counties containing National Forest System land, while also reducing Forest Service management costs by ensuring that such counties have a dependable source of revenue from National Forest System land to provide a temporary extension of the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act of 2000 and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole rose on Thursday, September 19, 2013, Amendment Number 7, printed in Part C of House Report 113-215, offered by the gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa, has been disposed of. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in Part C of House Report 113-215, on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment Number 1 by Mr. Daines of Montana. Amendment Number 3 by Mr. McClintock of California. Amendment Number 5 by Mr. McClintock of California. The Chair will reduce to 2 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote after the first vote in this series. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 1, printed in Part C of House Report 113-215 by the gentleman from Montana, Mr. Daines, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment Number 1, printed in Part C of House Report Number 113-215, offered by Mr. Daines of Montana.
The recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of a recorded vote will rise to be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
The House passes the continuing resolution funding the federal government past September 30th through December the 15th, and also stripping out funding for the 2010 health care law. The final passage, the vote was 230 to 189. They return now to finish up work on a bill dealing with timber harvesting on federal lands. Couple of amendment votes and final passage coming up. This amendment vote on the forest bill is 15 minutes, and while we have the time, we're going to take you live to Capitol Hill, the Rayburn Room. There's a rally just about to get underway with Republicans following the vote, the passage of the continuing resolution defunding the health care law. And again, that vote 230 to 189. Looking at a live picture from the Rayburn room on Capitol Hill, waiting to hear from House Republican leaders and others gathered following the passage of the continuing resolution 230 to 189 that also strips out the funding for the 2010 health care law. The House is in the middle of a 15-minute vote on an amendment to the forest bill, one of 3 amendments. We'll also see a likely motion to recommit final passage, and then they will be done for the week and likely back in the middle of next week. The Senate is back on Monday, and the Wall Street Journal, writing about the debate ahead on the continuing resolution, says that it could take a week after the House passage of the spending bill for the Senate to surmount procedural hurdles, strip out measures hampering the health care law, and hold a final vote. The bill would then return to the House, but it is far from certain that GOP leaders would quickly bring it up and approve it without additional changes. That's from the Wall Street Journal this morning.
Good morning, and thank you everyone for joining us following this important vote. Today, the House has acted. The House has acted to keep the government open, to control spending, and to protect people from an unworkable law that is making it harder on them. My colleagues have all voted in favor of this law because it's going to help moms and dads and families and young people and seniors all across this country. And that's who this is all about. When I was home in August, like so many of my colleagues, I heard the stories from individuals and families who are concerned, who are panicked over the implementation of this law and the impact that it's having on their lives. So that's why the House has acted. And today, we urge the Senate to take action. We urge our colleagues in the Senate, our allies on the outside, and the American people to push the Senate to have this important debate on the floor of the Senate. Because if we are going to take action on behalf of the American people, we need the Senate to have this debate on the floor of the Senate.
When we started this health care debate, the President led with a very big promise to the American people. If you like the health care that you can have, that you currently have, you can keep it. Today the headline reads that 20,000 Americans who work for Home Depot will no longer be the case. They were provided even as part-time. But Obamacare does not allow that. That's why today when we acted, it wasn't just a group of Republicans, but it was a bipartisan vote. Let me state that again because I want to make sure you write it correctly. It was a bipartisan vote because we're Americans first. It's a privilege to sit in this office, and I will tell you this. As the founders crafted this country, they crafted two bodies to work. The House has now done their work. We call upon the Senate to do theirs as well.
You know, the House has been fighting to stop Obamacare since 2009. And we have said over and over again, this law is going to increase the cost for the working middle-class families of this country, and we're now seeing it. We've said from the beginning that this law will harm our economy, and we're seeing our economy turn from a full-time job economy into a part-time job economy. That's why we are doing our job, and now it is up to Senate Democrats to show some responsibility and follow the House's lead. Now, you know, many Senate Republicans have promised to leave no stone unturned fighting this bill, and all of us here support that effort. Yeah. Now, we're calling on Senate Democrats to do the same thing. And I want to know where Senator Pryor stands on protecting the middle class from the consequences of this horrific bill. Earlier this summer, a nonprofit group in Fort Smith, Arkansas, that provides care for seniors announced that they're cutting hours for hundreds of staff members to 28 hours a week. How about Kay Hagan in North Carolina? Does she understand the consequences that Obamacare is having in her state? Carly C's, a grocery store, the president, Mac McClam, has said it's not feasible or sustainable to extend coverage for all of the 1,100 employees that he has. He, too, may have to cut hours for much of his workforce. What about Mary Landrieu of Louisiana? Obamacare is also hurting her hardworking taxpayers in that state. In July, Lawrence Katz, owner of Dot's Diner, told the senator in a committee hearing that he may have to lay off as many as 16 workers. And these are working middle-class Americans just trying to make ends meet. Yeah. And finally, what about Mark Begich of Alaska? Yeah. Through Obamacare, Americans across the country could be hit with the rate shock. In Alaska, it's predicted that premiums could rise between 30 and 80%. What is Senator Begich going to do about this? Will he vote to keep Obamacare in place? We're into the fight, and we want the Senate to join us.
You know, we had a victory today for the American people. And frankly, we also had a victory for common sense. Yeah. Listen, Senator Baca said it right several months ago when he said that this law is a train wreck. And it is a train wreck. You know, the president said, you know, if we pass this law, health care costs will go down. Well, now we find out that health care costs are going up for most Americans. The president said if you like the health insurance policy that you have, you can keep it. Well, we found out that's not quite accurate either, and in the coming months, millions of Americans are going to find out it's just not quite true. Listen, this is hurting our constituents, it's hurting the American people. At a time when the economy is barely eking along, wages aren't increasing, new jobs aren't available, and what are we doing? We're putting more cost and more inconvenience on the American people. It's time for us to say no. It's time to stop this before it causes any more damage to American families and American businesses. You got businesses all over the country who are not hiring because of the impact of this law. You've got other businesses that are reducing the hours for their employees because of this law. And so our message to the United States Senate is real simple. The American people don't want the government shut down, and they don't want Obamacare. The House has listened to the American people. Now it's time for the United States Senate to listen to them as well. Thank you.
That was awesome.
It's like we should have had some photographers, but everybody's back there. We each take a turn walking up.
Republicans gathering after the passage of the continuing resolution funding the federal government past the deadline of September 30th, the end of the fiscal year, for 3 more months, and defunding the 2010 health care law. The final passage, the vote was 230 to 189. The unofficial tally showing 2 Democrats, Jim Matheson of Utah and Mike McIntyre of North Carolina, voting in favor of the CR. 1 Republican, Scott Ridgewell of Virginia, voting against it. And some reaction on Twitter from members of the House and Senate. Senator Mike Lee of Utah tweets that the House of Representatives has listened to the American people and just voted to defund Obamacare. Frank Pallone, Democrat of New Jersey, says the GOP government funding measure not only eliminates the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, but guts Children's Health Program, CHIP. Also from Blake Farenthold, a Republican of Texas, he tweets, just voted to prevent a government shutdown and fund everything but Obamacare. And here's one from Steve Scalise from Louisiana. He says, time for conservatives to unite their caucus in this fight to protect American families from devastating Obamacare. You can go to twitter.com/cspan and see what members are tweeting today. And a reminder, too, about Steve Scalise. He's our guest on Sunday on Newsmakers, 10 o'clock Eastern, following Washington Journal here on C-SPAN. The House is in the first of 3 amendment votes to a bill dealing with timber harvesting on federal lands. So 3 amendment votes. Final passage is still ahead. We'll show you some of the debate on the continuing resolution from earlier today, starting with Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I come to the floor in many ways as a mother. As a mother concerned about the children of America, as a grandmother concerned about all of America's children, but as a mother who steps into this chamber to say, this place is a mess. Let's get our house in order. We are legislators. We have come here to do a job for the American people. And that job means we have to make the government run for the good of the people. We are not here to expand government, but we're not here to eliminate government. If the idea is to limit government, let's work together to do that. But what is brought to the floor today is without a doubt, a measure designed to shut down government. It could have no other intent. Its purpose is clear. And if our colleagues on the Republican side deny that, then they have no idea of the gravity of the situation, to quote the Music Man, of the trouble that is contained in this resolution today. It is a wolf in wolf's clothing. The underlying bill to shut down government, the CR, is reason enough to object to it, because that bill will cost at least 1 million jobs in the course of the next year. It will cost 1 million jobs. It will not only do that, it will cut our investments in the future, in education, in biomedical research. The National Institutes of Health has the biblical power to cure. Where there's scientific opportunity, we have a moral obligation to meet that scientific obligation with the resources, to respect the talent, the intellect, the God-given intellect of the science to cure. And what do we do in this bill? Say no. We cut that. Doing serious damage to science, to health, and not only that, to our competitiveness as a nation. It's a vote that guts those investments, and not only that, if the underlying bill were not bad enough, if there were not reason enough to say, no, are you kidding, no, then they cloak it in wolf's clothing in saying, in their view, that they're going to defund the Affordable Care Act. And you know what that's about? That's simply about putting their friends, the insurance companies, back in charge in medical decisions for your families. But it goes farther than that. If that were not bad enough, it slashes the strongly bipartisan children's health insurance program by 70%, effectively eliminating an initiative that provides much-needed health to millions of low-income children. I remind my colleagues that that bill passed the United States Senate in a bipartisan way with a veto-proof majority. A veto-proof majority. But that's not good enough for you. You've got to slash it by 70% to harm those children once again this week. It wreaks havoc on the health care for our seniors by disrupting provider payments for Medicare and Medicaid. Either you don't know what you are doing, or this is one of the most intentional acts of brutality that you have cooked up with stiff competition for that honor. It cuts billions of dollars, again I say, from the National Institutes of Health, delaying important research and denying medical breakthroughs for future generations. Democrats have a responsible proposal that balances, that reduces the deficit under leadership of Chris Van Hollen, our ranking member on the Budget Committee. It reduces the deficit in a responsible way, ends the devastating across-the-board cuts of the sequester, and it makes investments in the future and keeps government open, as opposed to this bill intended to shut government down. Keeps government open and working for the American people. I know my colleague, Mr. Hoyer, has been very vocal on this subject, and he will quote some Republicans and what they have said about this. So don't take it from us. Take it from you, Mr. Chairman, that this bill, well, I'll leave Steny to have the exact quote, does not enable us to do the work of government. I urge a no vote on this continuing resolution. It's a terrible proposition for our families and our communities and our country. It's always time for us to work together to help ensure, not endanger, the economic security and prosperity of the American people. I urge my colleagues to vote no and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back, and the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished Majority Leader of the House, Mr. Cantor of Virginia.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the gentleman from Kentucky, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee in the House, for his leadership bringing this bill forward. Madam Speaker, I rise today in strong support of this measure, providing for the continuing resolution. Madam Speaker, today millions of Americans across this country are struggling. They're struggling to find good-paying jobs, and they're struggling to pay their bills. And their frustration with government continues to grow. These Americans, these hard-working, middle-class Americans...
Request for a recorded vote on Amendment number 3, printed in Part C of House Report 113-215 by the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 3, printed in Part C of House Report number 113-215, offered by Mr. McClintock of California.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of a recorded vote will rise. Sufficient number having risen. Recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic devices. This is a 2-minute vote.
This is another amendment vote to the bill dealing with timber harvesting on federal lands. They debated that yesterday, finishing up amendment votes today and final passage today as well. 2 amendments here by Tom McClintock of California.
This vote, the yeas are 243, the nays are 172. The amendment is adopted. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on Amendment number 5, printed in Part C of House Report 113-215 by the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in Part C of House Report number 113-215, offered by Mr. McClintock of California.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise to be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
And it's the last amendment vote on a bill that expands timber harvesting on federal lands. Tom McClintock of California with an amendment. It's a 2-minute vote, as you heard. Within the hour, the House has passed the continuing resolution funding the federal government past September 30th, the end of the current fiscal year. It also would exclude funding for the health care law. Some reaction from the Senate side, the Majority Leader Harry Reid issuing a statement reading in part, quote, Republicans are simply postponing for a few days the inevitable choice they must face, pass a clean bill to fund the government or force a shutdown. I have said it before, but it seems to bear repeating. The Senate will not pass any bill that defunds or delays Obamacare. Part of the statement from Majority Leader Harry Reid. Reaction on Twitter, our hashtag C-SPAN chat, I Love Politics says, does this extension get us to Christmas? Humbug. People get ready, prepare, and have a good Christmas. Come January 2014, poverty rises. Another view from Vincent, who says it passed. The American people have been heard. Now it's time to call your senators. You can weigh in with your thoughts. Twitter.com/C-SPAN. The hashtag for the discussion is C-SPAN chat.
The yeas are 249, the nays are 166. The amendment is adopted. There being no further amendments, under the rule, the committee rises.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House in the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 1526 and pursuant to House Resolution 351 reports the bill as amended by that resolution back to the House with sundry further amendments adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on any further amendment reported from the Committee of the Whole? If not, the Chair will put them in gross. The question is on the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed will say no. Opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to restore employment and educational opportunities in and improve the economic stability of counties containing National Forest System land while also reducing Forest Service management costs by ensuring that such counties have a dependable source of revenue from National Forest System land to provide a temporary extension of the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act of 2000 and for other purposes.
Gentlemen will suspend. The House will be in order. The Chair would ask all members of the House to please take their seats, please take their conversations from the floor. Chair would ask members on both sides of the aisle to please take their conversations from the floor. The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit it to desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
I'm opposed to it in its current form.
The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Barber of Arizona moves to recommit the bill H.R. 1526 to the Committee on Natural Resources.
I ask unanimous consent that this reading be dispensed with.
Without objection, reading is dispensed with. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Arizonans know only too well the horrific effects of wildfires that they have on our communities. In July of this year, our state was devastated by the Yarnell Hill fire that swept across 8,400 acres of land in 15 days, killing 19 brave firefighters from the Granite Mountain Hotshots. They died in the line of duty, doing one of the hardest jobs in firefighting. This tragedy will leave physical scars on Arizona for many years to come, and the emotional scars will last forever. These fires are not unique to our beautiful state. Every year, communities across our nation battle wildfires that destroy their land, their homes, and their livelihood, and too often take lives. The brave men and women that we send in to fight these wildfires put their lives on the line to protect us. A decade ago this summer, another devastating fire swept through the community of Summerhaven in my district. It destroyed 350 homes and businesses. That area will not recover fully for years. 2 summers ago, my district in southeastern Arizona endured the Horseshoe 2 fire. On May 11, 2011, this fire started on the east side of the Chiricahua Mountains near the community of Portal. The fire continued to burn steadily, heading into the northwest, and on June 8th, the fire reached the Chiricahua National Monument, burning into the southeast corner of the park. In late June, the fire was finally contained, but by then, 223,000 acres within the Chiricahua Mountains had been burned. We were lucky that summer in southeastern Arizona that there was no loss of life. We did not lose one firefighter. And this motion to recommit is very straightforward. It ensures that we provide our firefighters with the most advanced equipment, including air tankers, communication gear, and personal safety equipment. As the father-in-law of a firefighter, this issue is both a personal one and one of great importance to the people I represent, to Arizona, and to many communities across the western United States. I think about my son-in-law Jason going off to work, and my daughter at home with our 2 grandchildren, one of whom is barely 1 year old. And I also think of each brave man and woman across our nation that leave a wife, a husband, a son, or a daughter every day to do the same. We owe our firefighters an eternal debt of gratitude for their courageous work. And we also owe them the best resources to protect them as they put lives, themselves, and others in harm's way trying to save lives, homes, businesses, our land, and our forests. This is the final amendment to this bill. It will not kill the bill or send it back to committee. If adopted, the bill will immediately proceed to final passage. And I ask my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to join me and stand with our firefighters by supporting this motion to recommit. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to claim time in opposition to the motion to recommit.
Is the gentleman opposed to the motion?
I am opposed to the motion, yes.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I have to wonder sometime about the seriousness of these motions that recommit that comes from the other side, but I especially have to do so today. Earlier today, we passed a continuing resolution that provides over $600 million for firefighters to fund all these firefighters' actions that we had this year. And the author of the MTR voted against the motion. There's nothing serious here. This motion to recommit offers absolutely no solution. Here's the facts. The fact is, just last year, we haven't got the figures this year, but last year, over 9 million acres of national forest land burned. 9 million acres. Can you imagine the carbon imprint of that, by the way? And secondly, we only harvested or managed 200,000 acres nationwide. That means that 44 times more national forest lands burned than were properly managed. This bill addresses that by properly managing our forests. And the result will get us back to where we used to be, where we used to spend $1 on forest management and get $2 back in return because we manage our forests. Now it's reversed. For every $2 we spend today, we get $1 back. That doesn't make any sense at all. There's been no solutions out there, and this is not a solution either. The solution is the underlying bill. I urge a no vote on the MTR and a yes vote on the underlying bill, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion to recommit. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I call for a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this is a 5-minute vote on the motion to recommit and will be followed by a 5-minute vote on passage of the bill if ordered. This is a 5-minute vote.
Last couple of votes on the House floor for the week. The bill is a bill that would expand timber harvesting on federal lands. Final passage is next. This is the Democratic motion to recommit, which would authorize the Secretaries of Agriculture and Interior to use the funds necessary to provide wildland firefighters with the most advanced firefighting and personal safety equipment. It's a 5-minute vote. Final passage is next. That a 5-minute vote as well. Earlier, the House passed the continuing resolution funding the federal government through the middle of December, also eliminating funding for the health care law. The final vote was 230 to 189. It now goes to the Senate, which will take it up next week.
Vote. The yeas are 189, the nays are 220.
I'd have gotten there, but
Mr. Waxman. Mr. Waxman votes aye. Mr. Hertz. Mr. Hertz votes no.
On this vote, the yeas are 190, the nays are 228. The motion is not adopted. The question is on final passage of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Mr. Speaker, for purposes, gentleman from New Jersey rise.
I request a recorded vote.
The gentleman requests a recorded vote. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
It's the final passage vote on the bill expanding timber harvesting on federal lands. 5-minute vote, and this will wrap it up for the day and for the week for legislation in the House. They passed earlier the continuing resolution, which funds the federal government past the end of fiscal year date, September 30th, 10 days from now, and will fund the government through December the 15th. It also includes language eliminating funding for the health care law. That passed by a vote of 230 to 189, and 2 Democrats joined the Republicans in that. Jim Matheson of Utah, Mike McIntyre of North Carolina voting in favor of the CR. One Republican, Scott Ridgell of Virginia, voting against the CR. Democratic leader in the Senate, Harry Reid, issued a statement about the passage of the CR in the House, saying in part, quote, Republicans are simply postponing for a few days the inevitable choice they must face: pass a clean bill and fund the federal government, or force a shutdown. I have said it before, but it seems to bear repeating. The Senate will not pass any bill that defunds or delays Obamacare. Part of the statement from Harry Reid. Writing about what's possible ahead in the Senate next week, Byron York of the Washington Examiner writes that Senate Republicans, along with GOP lawmakers in the House, know that Senator Ted Cruz and his colleagues don't have the votes to pass a continuing resolution to defund Obamacare. They don't even have the votes, 41 in the Senate, to successfully filibuster a resolution that does fund Obamacare. But some had hoped that Cruz and company could at least stage an old-fashioned talking filibuster like Senator Rand Paul's March filibuster against U.S. drone policy that would at least be a high-profile symbol of Republican opposition to the president's national health care law. Now it turns they can't even do that. Quote, we won't have an opportunity to filibuster, says a Senate Republican aide. It's going to be a simple majority vote. That's from the Washington Examiner this afternoon.
On this vote, the yeas are 244, the nays are 173. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, on roll call number